Good morning, everyone. I hope you're rested and refreshed and ready to dive in with David and Melanie. We're so happy that they're with us today. Melanie McGhee is an award-winning author and the founder of Acceptance and Integration Therapy. David Patterson is an endowed professor at the University of Tennessee College of Social Work. He directs the Doctor of Social Work program and also is a UMass Center for Mindfulness qualified MBSR teacher. There will be some time in the presentation for you to ask questions toward the end, and I'll read your questions for you. So if you have them, even as you have questions as the presentation goes along, please just do the Ask the Speaker thing and I'll get it in my email. In addition, we wanted to make sure all of you know this session does have CE, but if you're in a session that does not have CE and you want to provide feedback, all you have to do is go to the credit tab as if you were filling out a CE evaluation. And even though there's no CE, you'll be able to give feedback on that presenter. So I'm going to turn it over to David and Melanie. Welcome. We're so glad you're here with us this morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be together in this way in our separate spaces, though it would be lovely to be together, and here we are. It's morning here in East Tennessee, and it seems only natural that we start our conversation about non-duality with maybe talking about evening a little bit. In the South, there is an incredible light that happens in the evening. There's a golden, ephemeral light that just seems to shimmer on everything. And it brings most of us to pause and just be with it for a moment. Well, my grandparents lived in South Carolina, and if I was visiting them and I happened to get in trouble, which didn't happen very frequently because I was a very good girl, but when it did happen, my grandmother would take me and stand me in front of her big vanity mirror. You know how some women in the South had these big vanity mirrors. It seemed as big as the room to me. My grandfather, on the other hand, he'd just tell me, go get a switch. But my grandmother, she'd stand me in front of that mirror and say, now, girl, you look at that mirror until you see God peeking back. Then you come talk to me about what you did. Well, I remember standing in that room one evening, looking in the mirror, and all of the dust motes just seemed to shimmer with this golden, brilliant, beautiful light. And then everything seemed to be made of the same tiny shimmering dust motes of gold. I seemed to be made of this light, the room, the dogs in the other room, my grandmother in the kitchen, as far as my little mind could wander, all seemed to be made of this same ephemeral, empty light. It was beautiful. After some eternity, I think that I saw God peeking back and went to talk to my grandmother. Can't even imagine what she saw when I looked up at her. But we've all had moments like that. We've had times when we knew that we are more than we appear to be. We know that life is more than it seems. And each other are so much more than our covering and what we look like. We've had moments of these expanded awarenesses. Maybe it was just looking into the eyes of someone we love, or maybe walking in the moonlight, staring at the ocean. These moments where life expands. This was my first experience that I can recall. And it illustrates one of the fundamental principles of acceptance and integration training. And that's the model that we're going to be talking a little bit about today as one doorway into non-dual awareness. These experiences that we have illustrate that principle. The true self is not encumbered by the limitations of a narrative. The true self is a being. And I just noticed that I'm not seeing anything on the screen, but so if we can move to the next screen. Yes, thank you, David. And so I want to talk a little bit about where we're going today. So if we can move forward to the next slide, we're going to look into having a shared understanding of non-dual awareness and resilience. David's going to talk with us about non-dual awareness across culture and various routes into non-dual awareness. What is non-dual awareness, resilience, and the emergent neuroscience around these two ideas? I'll share a brief introduction to acceptance and integration training, and I'll do a little trauma demonstration to relate this understanding about non-dual awareness and healing. And actually, we'll flip that. We'll do a group experience first, and then I'll do a trauma demonstration, and we'll have some time for question and answers. And as we're going, I invite all of us to put away our cell phones and take care of our bodies, make sure we're doing what we need to tend to ourselves. And as best you can, put away your distractions so you can really be with us this morning. And David's gonna take it from here for a little bit. And I've known David, and you can take it off screen share if you want for a moment, David. I've known David since I was, and I don't see an image of myself, just Cynthia, but that's okay. I've known David since I was 18 years old, and we've had a lot of adventures together. And one of our shared adventures have also been informed by our shared love of meditation and explorations into truth. And so you'll see as you get to know us a little bit better that we approach these territories from fairly different points of view, and we still end up in the same awareness of awareness. So David, take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Melanie. So I'm going to go back to sharing the screen. All of you can see that, I hope. We've been thinking about non-dual awareness without really having a name for it for a long time. As you heard in Melanie's story, she had early experiences with that. And in about 1981, we were in a truck driving through the mountains of northeast Georgia, and it was foggy. And I had read some Alan Watts, and I said to her, you know, this is what I love about fog. Fog shows us the interconnectedness of everything, the undifferentiated, the relationship between everything. And I think that must have touched her heartstrings, and I think that sealed the deal in terms of our relationship. So what is non-dual awareness? It is, as you see on the screen there, oops, sorry, back, here we go. It's the relative absence of thoughts, images, and emotions and sensations other than presence of being. That's one definition. And we'll touch upon a number of definitions. There's a suchness to this experience that can feel spacious and open and vast. And it's expansive enough, that experience is expansive enough to contain opposite states such as anger, fear, and sorrow, all which are present, but without the emotional charge. So across cultures and across times, as you see on the slide, seekers, mystics, scientists, and ordinary individuals have reported meditative and eyes wide open experiences of non-dual consciousness. And what I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about is that it's in all likelihood the experience, the meditative or perhaps hallucinogen aided experience of non-dual awareness, of that state of de-differentiation, that state of boundlessness without subject and object, likely arose from across time and across cultures, from meditative experiences and other experiences. And then what flowed out of that were philosophical and religious traditions that focused on the unity of all things. You see, again, some quotes on the screen. This mind itself bound by its knots. If one lets go, there is no doubt it will be free. The saying from the Heart Sutra in Buddhism, form is emptiness and emptiness is form. And then all is all and each is all, and the splendor of all is infinite. So what we have across time and across cultures is an attempt to give voice to the ineffable, to give voice to that which is profound and inexpressible. And it has shaped our cultures. And I think the other thing to sort of hold in mind is that even though there is this broad cross-cultural recognition of the profundity of the non-dual experience, we live in a world that is tantalized by the opposites, by duality, of good and bad, of us and them. And one of the realities of coming to our senses about non-duality is it helps us to begin to have pathways to transcend those states of duality within ourselves, within our interpersonal relationships, and also within our cultures. So pathways into non-dual awareness. We'll talk a lot in just a little bit about mindfulness practices and non-dual awareness. But also people across time have reported spontaneous experiences of non-dual awareness. Melanie's description of her experience as a child is one. And my hunch is that in this audience today, a vast majority of you have had glimpses of non-dual awareness or profound states of non-dual awareness that you perhaps didn't call non-dual awareness, but that sense of transcendence, that sense of vastness, that sense of loss of subject and object. Also, people have had experiences of non-dual awareness under the influence of hallucinogens, and that seems to have been the case across time. There is evidence in the Rig Vedas of the praise of soma, which was likely a psilocybin compound that people would have the experiences of non-duality. Now, of course, hallucinogens don't always result in non-dual experiences, but hallucinogens have been, in some cultures and at some times and in some practices, a doorway into the profound state of non-dual awareness. And then there is induced non-dual awareness, and that's part of what we'll be exploring today in Melanie's work of can we or how do we use induced NDA to open up therapeutic pathways for clients and for the culture. And so that will be part of the consideration today. You'll see that there at the bottom of the screen, again, pointing to the cross-cultural phenomena of meditative practices in Tibetan Buddhism and Sufism and Zen Buddhism and in Hinduism, all of which have practices. And one of the beliefs that has been held is that, oh, you can only have non-dual experiences through long periods of practices in certain meditations. And I think that belief is open to question now. So what are the fruits of mindfulness practice? If mindfulness practice, and mindfulness, we're talking about mindfulness practice in relationship to induced non-dual awareness, because mindfulness practice, there's a emerging over the last 30 or 40 years, there's an emerging body of evidence, and it's really heightened since 1981 of mindfulness practices. That research has begun to help us unlock what is happening in the mind in mindfulness practice, and and begins to illumine the experience of non-dual awareness. So mindfulness meditation can assist in attention control, emotional regulation, and self-awareness of cultivating those capacities. And as you see in the slide, it suggests that this then fosters self-regulation. And I think that that's something of a misnomer. I think that it might be most useful to think of it as it decreases, mindfulness practice over time decreases the need for self-regulation, that we develop the capacity to not respond, to not be reactive, to have a state of a sense of our state at any time, and to pay careful attention to concentrate. So it's self-regulation in a sort of autopilot perspective. Non-dual meditation aims to undo maladaptive cognitive and affective patterns by recognizing their constructed and transient nature. And I think that that's really important. It opens us to the recognition of these patterns that are transient, that arise, are present, and dissipate. Part of what is emerging in the science of mindfulness practice is a recognition that there are different states of mindfulness. And you see in this work by Schoenberg and colleagues from Vanderbilt, a conceptualization of levels of mindfulness practice from the neurovisceral integration, which are really mind-body practices, yoga, qigong, and then the recognition that these are distinct practices of meditation that have their distinct patterns of practice, but also neurophysiological and neurofunctioning markers. Concentration or focused attention is the second level of meditation practice. Insight or open awareness is the next level up, and then non-dual awareness, and then finally unified compassion, a state of profound compassion and high state of being. As you see in the slide as well, non-dual meditation practices revolve around the concept of non-duality, or thought to reduce one's sense of attachment or control, removing the separation between the observer and the observed in order to achieve experiential insight into the true nature of consciousness and to connect with a more unified reality underlying our daily experience, that transcendent connection to the profound interconnection of all reality. So everyone loves to talk about neuroscience. The good news is, the good and bad news here is that the neuroscience of non-dual awareness is in very early stages. The work has been, part of the work has been trying to detect what are the EEG wave patterns that are found in non-dual awareness. And there's some advancing in that work. And there's also some critique in that, in terms of perhaps watching the change in gamma waves is an insufficient measure for a really complex phenomena. Studies have suggested a deactivation in the amygdala and the default mode network. There's increased in non-dual awareness, there's increased sensory monitoring. There is that sort of activation of attention without focus of attention. And there have been a limited number of fMRI studies in non-dual awareness to date, but we're really in the early stages. To summarize, or to try to put a frame on this, what we're attempting to do, or what is not we, I'm not a neuroscientist, what is being attempted is to see what are the signatures of that state of non-dual awareness. so that we can move beyond self-report to see when a person is in that state and what are the manifestations of that state. So part of our discussion and why this is important is that we believe that periods of and experiences of non-dual awareness will foster resilience. And resilience is defined by the APA as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, such as family. And I think all of, I won't go on reading that because I think all of you have a felt sense of what is resilience and what is the absence of resilience. There is evidence. There is evidence that non-dual awareness supports resilience by fostering, as you see on the right-hand side, the capacity to decenter from experience, adapting a metacognitive perspective, disidentifying from the self as the subject of experience, that manifesting a reflective distance instead of a reactive response, that capacity to move away, to not identify this is happening to me as opposed to this is happening, this is there. Equanimity, a balanced perspective emanating from a transcendent worldview and a non-selfing sense of meaning arising from the experiential encounters with the ultimate reality, that in encountering in non-dual awareness, that profound transcendent reality, there is a sense of equanimity and acceptance as opposed to resistance, acceptance of what is, of the impermanence and insubstantiability of all reality, and acceptance that this is transient. And interioception, which is a fancy term for the resulting experiential understanding of the permeable boundaries between body and world, or stated otherwise, interioception is a cultivated capacity to sense the body. Sorry, here we go. And moving on to the next slide.
So I'm going to talk a little now about why we don't stay in those expanded states all the time. Why don't those states last? We have these moments and then those moments collapse. And we can think of this as the true self. Our true essential nature is this brilliant shining being, like a brilliant sun rolling through life. If we could go back to the previous slide, please.
Sorry.
Thank you. So if you can imagine, like as we move through life, we experience these traumas and early decisions, injunctions and scripts, identities get layered on, the wounds, our limiting beliefs, mental illness, cognitive distortions, and so much more. And we just keep rolling like a tumbleweed, collecting more and more charged, tangled energy. And from one paradigm, we could think of this tumbleweed as kind of sheaths, or in Sanskrit, they're called malas. And these three different sheaths that surround the true self. And essentially, those are ideas of all the ways that we're separate from each other, and all the ways we're separate from consciousness, all the ways we identify with how we do things and how we don't do things. It contributes to our sense of unworthiness that all of us experience from some time at some point or another. And so as we move through life, we have these open, expanded awarenesses, and then something happens, the baby cries, we hit a pandemic, something happens, and we get all tangled again in some reactive charge. Next slide, please. Avante. So this charged energy shows up as the four elements of human experience: thoughts, images, emotions, and sensations. We get bound to these experiences and entangled, and it really limits our freedom. It limits our capacity to choose. It limits our choices. Their choices are informed by the charged energy rather than a freedom of spacious movement within our own beings. Next slide, please. We've all had great teachers. We wouldn't be in this virtual hall together if not for our teachers who urged us to continue learning, who gave us their wisdom, who shared themselves so generously with us, each of us. So for me, I want to take a moment and just pause and thank our teachers, my teachers, your teachers, and to acknowledge one of our own this morning. Um, Linda Goranson took her next assignment, as my father-in-law would say, a couple of months ago. And she was a member of this community, and she invited me into the community. She and I presented together at ACEP, and she was a brilliant shining star. And I just want to take a moment for us to acknowledge her. She was a great teacher to many, many therapists. And because of her generosity, many, many more people are being helped because she gave of herself. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Next slide, please. AAIT, Acceptance and Integration Training, is informed by my teachers. It's informed by the confluence of 5 streams of knowledge. When I was a baby social worker in my mid-20s, one of my teachers and one of my friends who was a social worker, they both said the same thing to me. If you want to become good at this, if you want to master therapy, you need to find masters and study with them. So I took that to heart and I sought out amazing, masterful teachers and did just that. It was my great good fortune to study with Corey Hammond, who taught me for years, 3 years on Ericksonian hypnosis and informed the foundation of my work. I had the great good fortune to study with Bob and Mary Goulding of redecision therapy, who were contemporaries and students of Eric Byrne and Fritz Perls. And then I met Dick Alney and studied with Dick for years. Dick was, if acceptance had a country, Dick Alney would be its minister, it would be its poet laureate. He was an amazing man, and his idea around self-acceptance is that it's training, that we are always encountering other experiences that challenge us to accept. And so when we invite ourselves into acceptance, we open ourselves to experience essence of being. He described self-acceptance as a training. He said that self-acceptance training is experiencing oneself in any given moment without the inhibition of self-judgment, self-criticism, or self-evaluation. And it's acceptance and integration training is the same. It's a training. We're all always experiencing new things that we are challenged to accept and then integrate. And AAIT is also informed by non-dual philosophy. As David mentioned, we've had this shared interest before we even knew that there was a name for it. And I've been studying non-dual philosophies for 30 years or more at this point. And finally, acceptance and integration training is informed by the work of my mentor, Jivarad Slavinsky. And he developed PEAT, which stands for Prime Energy Activation and Transcendence. Jivarad is a mystic and a psychologist in Belgrade, Serbia. If integration were a country, he would be its minister of wholeness. He's an amazing man, and I'm deeply grateful to what I've learned from him. And I'll be sharing with you today a little bit of what that is. Next slide, please. Avante. So we're talking about why those things don't last, why those states don't last. And acceptance and integration training is a model that's informed by the influence of 6 principles. There are 6 principles and 5 phases that pull that model together. If we could go back to the previous slide, please. Thank you. So we're only going to talk about 3 of those principles today. One of them is, as we talked about a moment ago, the true self is not encumbered by the limitations of a narrative. The true self is a being. If you can imagine working with someone, and if you approached all of your clients from that standpoint, always keeping your eye on the ball, that what you are advocating for is the emergence of their true self, the essential nature, their sovereign self, it changes the game a little bit. It gives everything a little more brightness and a little more clarity about what's really at stake here. Next slide, please. Another principle that we're going to play with today is this principle regarding the non-dual states. The non-dual states of empty consciousness are an indication and mechanism of transformation. Cultivating an awareness of these states contributes to increases in present focused attention, empathy, self-compassion, and more skillful choices. And what we're talking about, so let me break this down just a little bit. As a practitioner, David's a scholar, I'm a practitioner. As a practitioner, what I'm looking for after a piece of work is their state relatively empty? And that becomes notable. Your clients come to recognize what empty is, what non-dual feels like, and that in itself feels pretty miraculous. But so we're first looking to discern, has the problem been resolved by recognizing the degree of emptiness of their state. Finally, cultivating an awareness of these states contributes to increases in present focused attention, empathy, self-compassion, and more skillful choices. Because what happens is that you're no longer entangled in some charge. You're no longer bound by the tension of a limiting thought or an unsatisfying emotion or a traumatic image that continually imposes itself on you. There's an inner spaciousness. And one of the, I said earlier that there are 5 phases that informs this model, and one of the phases is embodiment. And that means really giving our clients tools that they can begin sweeping clean their own heart and taking responsibility for intending to their state so that they can access greater and greater spaciousness within, because from there, the choices that we make tend to be more informed by energy that's closest to who we are rather than the entanglement of that tumbleweed surrounding us. Avante. So I thought I'd take a little time now, and we've been talking about non-dual awareness a lot, and you can take it off screen share if you want, David. We've been talking about non-dual awareness a lot, and it might be a nice time to experience it, as best we can, just to see what happens as a kind of group experience. So if you will, put away any distractions. If you have your phone out, please take it aside. If you are in space with other people, just as best you can, give yourself a little time to be just quiet with yourself. This will take about 10, 15 minutes or so. And this is how we're going to do this. This particular time period that we're in collectively is quite stressful. And we're experiencing that stress in a lot of different ways. Some of us are worried about health. Some of us feel stressed about finances. Others feel stressed about loved ones. Others feel stressed about our economy. There's all kinds of things that we're feeling stressed about. So what I invite you to do, we're going to play with that stress a little bit, the tension of that, just to see where we can go with that. So what I'd like you to do is just identify a particular stressor that you're experiencing in this moment. And if you want, you can write that down, just so you know what that stressor is. You can complete the sentence, I feel stressed about. All right. Now, with this practice, as others have said, I really urge you just to take this in for yourself and don't try to learn anything right now. Just you do yourself and your clients a disservice. Really allow yourself to experience this. So we all know that the psyche doesn't know the difference between a goal that has been realized in real life and a goal that we have imagined. The psyche doesn't know the difference between that. So we're going to use that to our advantage. We've seen athletes and speakers do that all the time, where they imagine some success and that success infuses itself in them in some way. So we're going to use that to our advantage related to the stress. So, and see if we can step our way into higher goals. So I'll be asking some questions, and you do the best you can with answering them the best you can. That will be good enough. And I'll be asking you about goals. What goal is there? And at some point you'll feel, I don't have any more goals. There's like nothing there. There's just nothing. And so when that happens, you'll just move your awareness into that spacious nothingness, if that happens for you. And I'll guide you through it so you don't have to remember. So I'd like you all just to close your eyes for a moment, finding a comfortable posture where your body can be supported and at ease. And get in touch with that stress again. And notice on a scale of 0 to 10, how strong is it? 10 being the highest and 0 not so high. Not at all, which you wouldn't be doing this. So feeling that stress, where do you feel it most strongly in your body? Notice what shape it is. If it doesn't have a shape, tune into it. Feel it as strongly and fully as you can. Give it a shape. What color is it? Again, if it doesn't have a color, just give it a color. What size is it? How big is it? Is it inside, outside your body, or both at the same time? Is it body temperature, warmer or cooler? What's it made of? If it had a substance, what would the substance be? How heavy is it? Is it tons or ounces? And how strong is it? Scale of 0 to 10, feel how strong it is. And just take an easy breath, eyes closed, and tell it, hey, wake up, I want to talk with you. Let's have a little conversation. You can just do this silently and tell it, I know you mean me well, so please communicate as clearly as you can so we can understand each other. And I'd like you to understand that it will communicate with you as a thought, image, emotion, or body sensation. Just accept whatever arises, and it will become more and more clear as we go. And ask it, with this stress, this tension, what is it that you want for me? What's your goal? Accept whatever it gives you. It will be a thought, image, emotion, or sensation. Thank it for that. Use the playground of your imagination. Create some scenario where you realize that goal. Feel what it feels like to realize that goal as fully as you can. And take an easy breath. And thank it. And ask it, now that we've realized that goal the way you want it to be, what goal do you have for me that's more important and even higher, spiritually higher? Accept whatever it tells you. If it's not a higher goal, check it just like you would. Say, hey, wait a minute, that doesn't seem higher. Is that a higher goal? What's a higher goal? Use the playground of your imagination. Create some scenario where you realize that goal. Feel what it feels like to realize that goal. Thank it for that. And ask it, now that we've realized that goal the way you want it to be, what goal do you have for me that's more important and spiritually higher than the previous goal? Thank it for that. Use the playground of your imagination. Create some scenario where you realize that goal. Feel what it feels like to realize that goal. And thank it for that. Take a little breath and ask it, now that we've realized this goal the way you want it to be, what goal do you have for me that's more important and spiritually higher? Thank it for that. Use the playground of your imagination. Create some scenario where you realize that goal. Feel what it feels like in your imagination to realize that goal. And thank it for that. Take a little breath and ask it, now that we've realized this goal the way you want it to be, what goal do you have for me that's more important and spiritually higher than the previous goal? Thank it for that. Use your imagination. Create some scenario where you realize that goal. Feel what that feels like. And some of you may be feeling like there are no more goals. You may be feeling a sense of peace or calm. Maybe that's its goal for you. Use your imagination. Create some scenario where you expand that feeling of peace and calm, if that's the case. Thank it for that. And ask it, now that we've realized this goal the way you want it to be, what goal do you have for me that's more important and spiritually higher than the previous goal? Thank it for that, and use the playground of your imagination to create some scene where you experience that goal. Feel what that feels like. And thank it for that. And as I said, it may be that you have no more goals arising, and that's just fine. We're going to do one more round. Ask it, now that we've realized this goal the way you want it to be, what goal do you have for me that's more important and spiritually higher? Thank it for that. Use the playground of your imagination to create some scenario where you realize that goal. Feel that as fully as you can. And it may be that you've come to this space where there are no more goals. There's just a kind of space. How would you describe that space just beyond the last goal? Some of us feel it as emptiness or stillness. Others feel it as a field of light or spacious nothingness, openness. Move your awareness into that spaciousness, into that openness, becoming one with it as best you can. Recognize this spacious openness as an aspect of your essential nature. Allow yourself to settle into this spacious awareness even more. And I'm going to be quiet for just a moment. Allow yourself to settle into this awareness and allow this settling to have an effect and leave an impression. So much so that by the time I talk with you again, it will have left a deep impression, much deeper than you're experiencing in this moment. Become aware of yourself as this spacious awareness extending in front of you, far, far away, beyond the edges of forever in front of you. And take a little breath. Become aware of yourself as spacious awareness extending behind you, beyond forever's gate behind you. On and on. Take a little breath. Become aware of yourself as spacious awareness extending to your left and to your right, far, far away to the left, beyond the gates of eternity to your right. Spacious awareness. Become aware of yourself as spacious awareness extending above you, far, far away above you, beyond the beyond above you. Become aware of yourself as spacious awareness extending beneath you, beyond the beyond beneath you, far past forever's gate beneath you. Spacious awareness. Become aware of yourself as spacious awareness extending simultaneously to your right and to your left, in front and behind, above and below, all at the same time, like a star, expanding into forever. I'm going to be quiet for a few moments now. Allow yourself to settle into this awareness and allow the settling to have an effect, deepening your experience so much so that when you do open your eyes in some time from now, this experience can seep into your awareness like oil in cloth. And from this awareness of yourself as spacious awareness, just lightly skip like a butterfly, alighting on the previous goals that you had in your awareness previously. And just notice how they feel to you. They feel lighter or far away or even important, realize, just notice how they feel. Until finally, you come back to the original stress and notice what you notice about that now. Notice if it feels like a 10 or a 7 or a 1. But particularly all that space in your body where you used to be feeling perhaps more tension, fill that space with light. Taking a few easy in-breaths, consciously filling that space where that tension used to live with light. Inside and outside. Couple more easy breaths. As you're ready, taking your time, you can open your eyes. David.
So, returning to the room, what we're going to do now is invite you to join in a collective effort to understand what we've all experienced just now. If you look in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you'll find a link, a chat link in the upper right-hand corner. And this is a link to a 3-question survey. And then there's a space for you to add any comments or experiences. But this is not a research study. This is an examination of what we've all experienced, and we'll report back to you about this later in the session today. So if you will, click on the link in the upper right-hand corner and go to the survey, and it takes less than a minute to answer the 3 questions. And so we're going to give you just a little time right now to do that, and then we'll resume.
Once again, you can get to the chat in the upper right corner of the viewer. In that chat, the link is posted.
Thank you, Patrick. So about a minute or 2 more of silence, and then we'll resume.
All right, I hope everyone's had enough time to complete that survey. You're welcome to pop back in and do that as you can. So if we could move forward to the next slide. Thank you, David. So there are multiple ways of extending our experience and awareness of non-dual states. What I just shared with you is something that I learned from Żywiec-Lewinsky. And pleroma means, it's a Gnostic term, and Gnostic in terms of Gnostic, Gnostic term that refers to expanded states of Like it would be the kind of calm that could contain any kind of tension or anger. Everything's okay. It's pleroma states are deep, like sometimes they're felt as bliss states or deep experiences of profound love. And it feels a little distinct from the empty, spacious state. But either way, encountering those with our clients, we can help, and with ourselves, we can help anchor or become more conscious of, like leaving little footprints into the state that become a little more recognizable for us. So what we just did was is called the pleroma star expansion. And if we could go to the next slide, please. So it's actually pretty simple. And one of the things with working with acceptance and integration training that we always check is what's happening in the body after an experience. What are the body sensations? Because if the body won't lie. So if the body's less than calm, there's some tension, there's some unresolved energy there. So what we do is with the calm state is direct awareness to the body sensations and the felt experience of that deep peace, calm, relaxed. And asking clients to identify how do they describe this state. I hear things like emptiness, light, stillness, spaciousness, nothingness, emptiness. And people just say different things. So asking them to settle into the experience, just to become familiar with it with a few easy breaths, recognizing that state as an aspect of their essential nature. What's valuable about that is that when we are in these states and we sort of feel this as part of who we are, it helps us shift identification from the tumbleweed to truth. So recognize the state as an aspect of who we are. Then become aware of that state expanding in all 6 directions, one by one, and then all at the same time. And it's not like the state itself is expanding. It's more like we're becoming aware of the expanded state. I hope that makes sense. And then once again, settle into it for another 30 seconds or to a minute. And what we're doing here is utilizing a principle in hypnosis called fractionation, where you kind of come out of trance and then back in, and then out a little bit more and back in. And that tends to deepen the experience. So again, directing awareness to the state or to the body sensations, settle into that state, whatever they call it, for 30 seconds or so, and then extend the awareness of that state in all 6 directions. A lot of times people are used to doing sort of visualizations associated with light, but they're moving either unidirectionally or just bidirectionally. And in this, we become aware of that state or that awareness, become aware of awareness, extending in all 6 directions, doing it one at a time and then simultaneously. Avanti. So moving on from that, and again, if you have questions about that, please don't hesitate to send them over to Cynthia. We want to do the best we can to address your questions. One of the questions that came up recently in a group of acceptance and integration training practitioners, certified practitioners, is the idea of, can trauma be integrated? She posted a link to a video clip of a very well-known trauma expert saying that trauma cannot be integrated. And I didn't post that because I haven't had a chance to really make sure. I saw it, and in context, it looked like that was what he was saying, but I'm not sure. So this prompted quite a conversation among practitioners who address trauma every single day. And so I wanted to just talk about that a minute. Next slide, please, Avante. So they said lots of things, but I just wanted to share a couple of things that they did say. With AAIT, we crossed the chasm between the traumatic moment in the here and now. We create a container where the two can meet and integrate, leading to healing. And so this is what we do with acceptance and integration training, is we disrupt time and space to integrate there and then with here and now. And what Logan is pointing to is that the way we do that by creating the container is part of what makes that possible. The method is called the fingertip method. I'm going to demonstrate it in just a moment. Again, I would discourage you from doing this with yourself or clients because training. But if the fingertip method moves the traumatic moment, the trauma moment, into the hippocampus like suspected, then yes, we do integrate. Forget no, but integrate, yes. Kara Logan is a licensed professional counselor and very, very interested in neuroscience. And so I think her point about this is interesting. And again, this is more room for more research. As David said, we're really trying to understand what's happening here. So, and finally, Sarah Reidner, who's a trauma expert working at a Cornerstone of Recovery, where they use a lot of acceptance and integration training, she says the tools we have to integrate trauma awaken the client's awareness, reveal and free up the true self, and are without parallel to other methods. She's well trained in trauma, so I trust her judgment on this. And frankly, I haven't seen the same. That part of what's different, part of what is alive in acceptance and integration training, treatment, and care for trauma is also giving people access to what's important to them spiritually, addressing that part of it as well. Okay, thank you. Avante. So we're going to do a little demonstration. I've invited Rick to join us this morning. Rick is the only person trained in Louisiana. He's recently took the Acceptance and Integration Training Foundations course. And so it's nice to see this work moving into Louisiana and the great good care that he's going to be able to provide to his community. So I want to thank him for his willingness to volunteer today and invite him on so we can do a little demonstration with trauma and see how this links to trauma care. So we could get the screen share away and Rick on.
Hello.
Hi, Rick.
You hear me okay?
I can. Good morning. Nice to see
Good.
you.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. So as I share, I know Rick because he recently took training, and but I don't know the issue that he's going to talk about. I just know that he said that there's an issue he wants to talk about related to his daughter, I think. But yeah.
So we ready just to
Let's just jump in.
start?
So I'm going to demonstrate, and then we'll talk about this a little bit. You can just sit down, Rick, and tell us a little bit about it.
You might want to switch to, excuse me, this is Cynthia. You might want to switch to gallery view so we can see both of you. That's your choice, just a suggestion.
Gallery view, great. Can I do that, or does somebody else do that?
I can do it for you.
Excellent.
There you go.
Much. That's not working for me. I can't see Rick at all.
I will change it back. Or Patrick, do you want to take care of that? There we go. Speaker view.
I can't see Rick at all.
Rick, you might want to turn on your video and your audio.
Can you hear me? See me? Okay.
Great. Okay.
Okay.
And we're still in speaker view. Gallery view would be nice, but I don't think I have control over that. So we're just going to keep rolling. So Rick, tell us a little bit about, and here's the thing, this is being recorded and people have access to this. So you can share as much or as little. This is what's beautiful about this work really, is that you can share as much or as little as you want.
Sure. I've worked a little bit with AAIT on some of this before. And I figured it might be relevant with the group of people watching today. Approximately 8 years ago, my wife and I lost our daughter at birth. She was full term. She had Down syndrome, and she had passed away due to unknown causes. They speculated on the cause, maybe being due to chromosomal abnormality. And the particular area that I'm focusing on, I've had two memories that are particularly were disturbing. One I've been able to come to complete peace with, and this second memory is particular to the moment in which we found out that we lost her.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is stand up and face the wall so your left shoulder is towards the screen and I can see you. We'll be able to see you.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you'll turn so your left shoulder is facing the screen. That's it. Perfect. Okay, Rick, you know, in these experiences, it's likely that it's like a little choppy video. And there's probably 3 to 5 moments in time that feel particularly challenging or charged. Of those, choose the one that feels the worst, just the worst moment. Feel what you felt then, see what you saw, think what you thought, as if it's happening now, as best you can. It'll be good enough. Freeze frame it, not a moment before, not a moment after, and tell us what you're seeing in your mind's eye.
We're we're at the hospital. We are in the one of the exam rooms of the hospital.
Rick, are you inside your experience looking out, or are you outside looking at yourself?
I'm looking through my own eyes, first person.
Very good. Okay. All right. So you see the hospital room?
Yes.
What else do you notice in the room? Like describe the photograph you can see that I can't see.
Sure. I'm standing up and it's nighttime. My wife is on the bed, still laying on the bed with a heartbeat monitor on her abdomen to check the heartbeat of our daughter. Mm-hmm. And we just were told that there was no heartbeat, that she had passed. And I'm standing over her belly.
Mm-hmm. What are you thinking in this moment?
I'm thinking, part of me is thinking this can't be happening. Part of me is thinking that it can't be true. Me saying out loud and inside, please don't go.
Yes.
Please don't be gone.
Yes.
Also feeling thoughts for my wife. Mm-hmm. How is she going to handle this?
Yes.
How are we going to handle this?
What do you feel emotionally?
Confusion, worry, a sad pain, mm-hmm. Anger, frustration.
Mm-hmm. And what do you feel in your body?
A little bit of shakiness in my legs, but a deep heaviness in my stomach, kind of like when you're feeling bile. I actually can taste bile right now.
Yes. Yes.
And in my heart, just a heaviness, a little bit of tearing in my eyes.
What can you feel the slight impression of the hospital room as well?
Yes.
Yes.
The lights in the room, the fluorescent lights over the bed. The doctor standing there telling us the news.
Yes.
The emergency doctor there, the OBG, emergency OBG, and the gizmos all over the place. And
right. Just take a breath, Rick, and experience this moment as fully as you can, not a moment before, not a moment after. And close the door on that as best you can. Just set it aside. Bring yourself to here and now, you and me and our virtual gathering. Feel this moment as fully as you can, standing in your room. And tell me what you see in your mind's eye of this moment.
I'm in the guest room of the house, my home. I can feel and sense the light above my head, the ceiling fan, and the natural light coming in from the window in front of me. I sense the screen to my left with you on it, and on my iPad, and it's setting on my table, and also being aware of the people that are in the room, in the session, the Zoom session. Standing on a firm floor, hardwood floor.
What do you feel emotionally in this moment?
I feel calmer. I feel a, you know, a bit of a sense of, maybe a bit of some feeling of like excitement, and anxiety, the exciting anxiety that you get when you're with a new group of people.
Yeah, like that. That makes sense. Sure. Yeah. And anything else in the image picture?
Just being in the room. I'm sorry.
Any other thoughts?
Glad to be here today. Glad to be alive. Glad to be, up this morning.
Right.
And feeling optimistic in that sense.
Okay, just take a little breath, feeling yourself present on this hardwood floor, this room, this time. And turn towards your left, towards the screen, towards me, halfway around, facing the opposite side of the room. Keep going. That's right. Stop there. That's right. And bring to mind that moment in the hospital, feeling what you felt, then see what you saw, think what you thought, as if it's happening now. Feel it as strongly as you can. Imagine the snapshot in front of you as a picture. Take the index finger of your dominant hand, place it in the middle of that snapshot of the traumatic moment. Very good. Now, estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the wall in front of you in the room where you are now.
Perhaps 1 foot.
Very good. Estimate the distance between the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the wall behind you in the room where you are now.
Approximately 8 feet.
Good. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the wall to your right in the room where you are now.
Approximately 8 feet or so.
Very good. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the wall to your left in the room where you are now.
Approximately 1 foot.
Very good. Estimate the distance from the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the ceiling above you in the room where you are now.
Maybe 4 feet.
Perfect.
5 feet.
Perfect. Very good. Estimate the distance between the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the floor below you in the room where you are now.
4 feet.
Good. Keep your hand aloft. Take a breath. Turn to your left to your original position. Keep going. Keep going. There you go. Stop there. Put your hand down. And tell us what you notice about that moment with your sweet daughter and your sweet wife.
Still, the image is still there. The thoughts have faded. The sensation in my body is faded.
And is the image still as vivid?
It's faded some. It's not as vivid as it was once before.
All right. So once again, getting in touch with it right now, feeling what's left of the image, feeling what's left of that thought, the emotion, the sensation. Take a little breath. Don't resist. You can be with this. Now set that aside. Close the door on that and bring yourself back to here and now, this moment. What are you thinking in this moment?
I'm thinking about just being in the room, speaking with you, being aware of that I'm being observed,
Right.
standing on my 2 feet. My
Yeah.
my legs aren't shaking as much as they were before.
Yes. Yes. Makes sense. And you feel the fan, the ceiling fan above your head. Yes.
Yes.
What do you feel emotionally in this moment?
I feel more calm in this moment.
Uh-huh. Yes. And
More
go ahead. I'm sorry.
more relaxed, more calm,
Uh-huh.
less tense.
Lessons. Okay. And just for a moment, just shake your body just a little bit. Just wiggle it just a little bit, especially the belly area. Just wiggle it a little bit. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Good. And what do you see in your mind's eye of this moment?
Of the here and now.
Yeah, the here and now.
Just really being able to visualize the room, being
Good.
familiar with the items, the
Good.
objects inside.
Perfect. Take a little breath, just bringing yourself present right here, right now. Not a moment before, not a moment after. Turn again to your left, to the opposite side. Keep going. Perfect. Now, place the snapshot of that traumatic moment, whatever's remaining of it. Feel what you felt then, see what you saw, think what you thought, as if it's happening now. Freeze frame that remaining snapshot. Take the index finger of your dominant hand, place it in the middle of that traumatic moment in front of you. Good. Now estimate the distance between the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the wall in front of you in the room where you are now.
Approximately 1 foot.
Very good. Estimate the distance between the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the wall behind you in the room where you are now.
Approximately 8 feet or so.
Beautiful. Estimate the distance between the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the wall to your right in the room where you are now.
Approximately 8 feet or so.
Very good. Estimate the distance between the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the wall to your behind you.
Wall behind, approximately 8 feet.
And the wall to your left.
Approximately a foot.
Very good. Estimate the distance between the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the ceiling above you in the room where you are now.
Approximately 4 feet.
Estimate the distance between the tip of your finger in the middle of that traumatic moment and the floor below you in the room where you are now.
Approximately 4 feet.
Good. Keeping your hand aloft, take an easy breath, turn around again to your left, your original position. Keep going. Beautiful. Stop there and rest your hand down. Take a little breath. And tell me what you notice.
I feel more open. The physical sensations are feel neutral. My spatial awareness feels more open. Distinct images.
And the original snapshot?
Not coming to mind.
Okay. And take a seat, Rick.
One moment. Can you see me okay?
And Rick, do you feel a need to forgive or for forgiveness?
A little bit.
Yeah. So just allow yourself to open the door to forgiveness in your own heart. Often when we feel the need, the feeling is right there. Can you feel that feeling as well? Yes.
Yes.
So first, just offer it to yourself, maybe even silently saying, I forgive you. You don't even have to know what for. And with easy breaths, allow that forgiveness to expand and include your sweet wife and your baby and the doctors and anyone else involved. I forgive you for having to leave us. I forgive you. Allow that forgiveness to expand and include anyone involved, anyone who comes to mind. I forgive you. Allow that forgiveness to expand even further, to include your own ancestors and hers, any little particles that had anything to do with this pain. I forgive you. Allow that forgiveness to expand even further, like a blossom dropped into a still pool of water, rippling out farther and farther to God, to life. I forgive you. I'm going to be quiet for a moment. You just let yourself settle in and experience the fullness of this forgiveness. Yes. Just opening your eyes whenever you feel like it. There's no hurry. I'm so sorry that you lost your girl. How are you feeling about this now?
Much better.
So when you say much better, tell me what's alive for you as you consider it now.
It's very interesting using this method a lot. I've done it since the previous time on this particular, very similar memory connected to this, the more significant one I had. Just a sense of just when recalling it now, not having any real emotional response to it, which I find very interesting. Just very peaceful sense. Peace in the sense of just a balance, a neutral, no, as they call it, an emotional charge. There's no charge. There's no emotional reaction.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Is there any part of you that thinks that you need to not be okay with this, not to be at peace?
No.
Okay.
No, there isn't a part of me. I would like to be okay with it.
Okay. All right. All right. And does it feel like this moment, this traumatic moment, could impose itself on you in the future against your will?
I do not feel that it can.
Okay. Okay. Beautiful work. Thank you so much for trusting us to do this in this way.
Sure.
We really
Thank
appreciate
you so much.
Yeah, and hang around. There may be questions for you specifically, but
Sure.
thank you, truly. It's no small thing for you to offer yourself to us in this way. So on behalf of the community, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a huge help. The first time doing it was big, and this helps it even more. So thank you.
Is there anything you want to say about your work before we move on?
No, I can wait till the end if people have questions or anything.
Okay. All right.
Stay
Thank
on
you.
for just a second, Rick. I just would, first of all, I'm so sorry for this loss as well.
Appreciate it, Doc.
And I invite everyone out there to extend in their hearts a sense of gratitude to you, Rick, for how courageous this was, because it was an act of profound courage. And so thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll come back. Thank you. Thank you again, Rick.
You're welcome.
All right.
Okay, so you might want to stay on camera, Melanie. So we have survey results, and I was going to. Isn't that what we're doing now?
If we could come, David, if we could come back to the survey results in a little bit, because there's a little.
All right. Sorry, I got out of line here.
That's all right.
All right, here we go. Share screen.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so, okay, awesome. We could move forward, Avante. So again, Rick, woof, I mean, it's just really no small thing to bring yourself to the table like this on a Sunday morning. So thank you again. And for the rest of us, I want to point out that what you saw here was one of the other principle of acceptance and integration training in action. And that's the idea that the integration of two opposing states can alleviate psychological suffering. We have all heard about integration, how important wholeness is, how important integration is. But truly, it has not been until I began studying with Shiva Resiliency that I learned how we can reliably access integration and facilitate integration within ourselves and others. And what you saw with Rick here is what we used was there are lots and lots of ways to bring about integration, and the state that arises is generally a state of emptiness or wholeness or ease. And what you saw was what we call the fingertip method for the alleviation of trauma. And what we're doing there is using the polarities of here and now with there and then adding space and time to disrupt that. So that's the other principle that you saw in play here. And there are so many ways of accessing integration for people. It just depends on what their problem is and what their need is. So we go from the simplest of oscillations to more layered processes that arrive in integration. Avante. What happens in integration is we find ourselves in that spacious awareness between stimulus and response. So typically what we would expect for Rick, for instance, is in situations that might previously have tickled the pain that he felt, it's more likely that there will just be a kind of spacious awareness. In fact, often people find after they do integration work is they're in similar situations and they recognize, wait, I just didn't react to that the way I normally would. That felt really different to me. And there's an awareness of the ability to make a different choice. So instead of getting embroiled in something that might previously have activated some repetitive pattern, some dynamic pattern, that pattern is just gone. There's just an awareness of the space. And in that space is our ability to choose. And that's significant because these choices that we make, that informs our dharma, that informs our karma, I mean, it informs our destiny. So yes, we have freedom from our previous pain and freedom to make more conscious choices. Next slide, please. Oh, David, here we go, you're on.
All right, as I was saying, hinting in advance, we have test results, or we have survey results. So just a moment. And you can all see that on screen. Melanie, you can see that?
Yeah.
All right, so we had 111 people, 124 people viewed it, 111 people completed the survey. We had people from the United States, Canada, Great Britain, the Czech Republic, I think India, and I'm not sure what MX is.
Mexico.
Mexico, of course, thank you. And in the US, we had folks from many different states. So thank you to all of you out there in cyberspace and for completing the survey. We'll show you the results now. So in the first question, I experience all things seemingly to unify into a single whole. And let me back up for just a second and say, the three questions that were used in the survey are from the NADA-S, and this was developed by Eric Garland and associates at the University of Utah. They're investigating non-dual awareness and evoking non-dual awareness states. Primarily, they're using body scan for that. And they have an instrument, non-dual awareness trait, and then non-dual awareness state. And these three items that we invited you to respond to are from the NADA-S. So, And just finally, and then this is the only instrument that's really out there right now to attempt to measure the experience in self-report of non-dual awareness states. So I experienced all things seemingly to unify into a single whole. About 23% of you said very much, and then you can see the distribution here. It looks like the vast majority experienced at least above a 5 on that scale. And then some of you didn't experience that, which is not surprising. But there was the most frequently responded to category was very much, and almost a quarter of you had a strong experience of that. The next item is I experienced all sense of self and identities dissolve away. And again, there's a little bit more variation there in terms of the degree to which that occurred. And I think one of the important issues here is that this was a very short practice done in about 10 minutes of time. And this was the reported experience. And I felt surrounded and filled with a blissful warmth or energy. And actually this got the strongest response of almost 37% of you. And really over 50% of you had a very strong or relatively strong experience of that state, or that experience. And then there are, I won't go through all the comments. There were a lot of comments, and thank you all. I mean, there were a lot of comments, and thank you all for your comments. We will look through these and integrate this in terms of our understanding of this practice. Melanie, you might want to make any comment, look at them and see if you have any comments about the ones that are on the screen right now.
Yes, the first one, the chronic loneliness and separation, that's real. A lot of us are experiencing that. And I actually worked this week with someone using this practice, and doing it as a group is interesting because we never know. And sometimes we bump into little things we have to go back and address. And yes, that's real. And I'm sorry, I'm just reading the rest of commitments despite, yes, that's, I completely understand and empathize with that. The acute awareness that that's a real stressor for you. And I understand that. And if we have time, maybe we can do a little bit more practice. It's natural to have the question, am I doing this right in a large group like this? We never know, and there's no feedback in the moment. And truly, you know, there is, acceptance and integration training practitioners are really fond of saying even bad Pete is better than no Pete. Even bad work is better than no work, typically, because we do see generally a softening and a decrease of pain as we go.
The tightness in my chest.
Very well, right. Yeah. I'm sorry, David. I can't really see I can't read it on my screen very well. Yeah, so I'm sorry about that. I can't. Yeah. That's a little better. Yeah. Tightness in my chest. Got distracted by the snagging misfits of paradigm goals. Be higher, my paradigm. Thank you. I'm not sure how, there are a lot of questions, and I find that I want to process your questions as a practitioner and address what's happening. And I'm also aware that we're not in that space right now for addressing specific things. I do want to say, however, if something got activated in you that feels really awful, then I want you to reach out to me. I don't want to leave you in a bad place. That's not cool for me as a practitioner. So please do reach out if you did get tangled up in something. What was ironic was experience wholeness, bliss, the dissolution of form. Yeah, it's so interesting how the conditioned self collapses back in, and it's like this is the real thing. And some of you experience that collapse pretty quickly. And yeah, that's interesting. And I think that I want to point out too, I want to reiterate something David said earlier about meditation practice. For me, meditation and integration practice, and for AAIT practitioners, integration practice and meditation, that the practice itself really does help us leave a pathway. You know, if you walk around your yard over and over and over, you're going to get a little pathway. You're going to see the path more clearly. In the same way, as we practice and enter these states repeatedly, it leaves a little footprint for us to follow that path in a little more easily.
Yeah, that would be talked about in neuroscience as strengthening neural pathways, that that the repeated practice of these practices strengthens that capacity and abilities. It's like a muscle, and it's like physical exercise. You're developing that capacity.
Yeah. And from a practitioner point of view, it makes you feel better and not so entangled in the cognitive distortions and narratives that keep us bound. So yeah, good. Thank you. Is there anything else that do you want to point out?
Do you want to see anything more, or do you?
No, it's a little challenging for me to read. And like I do find myself, I see the words like tightness and I want to go to that person and say, oh, wow, instead of reading the whole thing. So tightness in my chest, orange ball released and disappeared. That's good. Yeah, that's good. All right, good. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to stop this share. But once again, thank you to all of you who responded to this survey and willing to share your experience. And so thank you very much. I'll stop that share.
Yeah, and I really appreciate y'all doing that as well. I've only shared this instrument one time. I facilitate a Friday afternoon sanctuary, AIT sanctuary. All of you are welcome to come. It's just free for healing arts practitioners, where we do some integration practice. And last week David found this instrument, so we wanted to experiment with it. And I'm really curious what the differences are for people who experience something like this together in a group, and when we're doing individual work to resolve a specific problem. Like the first person, the loneliness would be a specific, very intense problem that would need a little more individual attention. So I'm curious about the difference between the individual responses and group responses. David, thank you for finding that instrument, and all Zoom folks, thank you guys for making it possible for us to do something live like this, to see what happens. Okay, so let's move forward a little bit with reviewing our objectives. If we could go back to screen share for a moment.
Yes.
Just want to make sure, you know, for those of us who need CEs, we want to make sure that you know what the objectives are, listing the 4 elements missing from an NDA: thoughts, images, emotions, and sensations, other than generally the presence of being present, just the presence of being. That's a little typo there. And then to name one method to extend awareness of the NDA, and that's the pleroma star expansion. And finally, describe how NDA supports resilience. And as David went over that is in decentering, in cultivating equanimity, acceptance, and interoception. Next slide, please.
So, like I said earlier, we are in the early stages of understanding the induction of NDA and methods for inducing NDA. So, you know, there are questions that there are research questions that need to be addressed. Do available instruments measure these states? You know, asking these 3 questions may be insufficient, and self-report is perhaps insufficient as well. Which processes produce the most robust and reliable NDA experiences? Is a body scan that Garland and his colleagues suggest induces NDA, or are AAIT methods more robust and reliable and produce greater results? Those are open questions. Can AAIT induced NDA be measured by EEG or fMRI? That's a question we hope to pursue in the next year or 2. And what is the experience variability in NDA states and their duration. So that question, it sounds a little complex, but one can have an expansive glimpse into non-dual awareness, or one can have a sustained period of time and do these practices as we were just talking about. Does it, at least in mindfulness research, there is strong evidence of dosage effect, that years or time of practice changes both the structure and function of the brain, and can specifically NDA states and induced NDA states change that functioning as well. And then what are the clinical outcomes or therapeutic benefits of NDA experience? We think that it is analogous to what is known in terms of the benefits of mindfulness practice, but that needs to be more carefully measured and examined. So those are the questions that are out there. And if any of you want to join us in trying to address these questions, we'd be happy to have that talk as well.
And for practitioners, their next steps, engaging in daily self-care with embodiment using integration. There are some links here because there are resources that I wanted you to have. This daily self-care links to a video on a very simple integration method called Ivana End of Words, and there are video instructions for that. As Saima said, our most important thing that we can do is to heal ourselves, to tend to ourselves. One of the principles of acceptance and integration training is to take responsibility for and tend to our inner state is the source of our freedom. So for our practitioners, that means we're doing our own work too. We're doing the practices that we do with others. We are doing them with ourselves. People who go through the training, they begin their own trauma care. They begin their own work in working in cultivating more a greater sense of wholeness and healing within themselves, because that's what we're bringing to the table to offer to others, which is no small thing, right? You're welcome to join us in the AAIT Self-Care Sanctuary. I mentioned that earlier. It's at 12:30 on Fridays Eastern time, and we spend about an hour together moving a little bit. Sometimes I invite an energy medicine person or a yoga teacher or somebody to join us for the first 10 or 15 minutes. Then we meditate a little bit, talk a little bit, and do some self-care practices with integration. Absolutely, if you're interested in the correlation, or not, that's the science word, but what I'm trying to say is if you're interested in how the practice of AAIT works to resolve problems, because we've talked more about the sort of outcome experiences people have in terms of their state, but what I'm doing as a practitioner is helping people resolve their problems and come to a greater healing. So you can absolutely find a practitioner to have a few sessions and see what it's like for you. You're welcome to join our Facebook community. I write about AAIT in there and offer suggestions and things. You can also just access training. So as practitioners, it's really the fundamental two things: take care of yourself and get better trained, get good training. Take care of yourself and get trained. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add that these slides are in a PDF that have been made available to you. So you should be able to download those.
Yeah. And if there's the other thing I just wanted to offer, I don't think I included this in the slide, but I'm not sure where it is too. You're welcome to email me on this, but I recently made available my book for PDF download, and that's a retreat and reflection guide. Doesn't have anything in it really about AAIT, but it is a useful tool for retreat and reflection, and this is a good time for that. So if that's something that you might find useful, you're welcome to email me and I'll send you the link. All right.
Sorry for the dancing screen.
That's all right.
We're going to go into questions and answers in just a second. I wanted you to know that there's a great deal of references available for you in the slides, and I'll stop the screen share.
All right.
Okay.
Cynthia, maybe you can join us.
I'm here. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for that. So we have a lot of questions and more are rolling in, so I'm going to jump right to it.
Okay.
This is from Shoshana Garfield. Can you please comment on the use of embodied meditative practices for fostering resilience and NDA? For example, Buddhist walking meditations and Russian sistema practices. And I think that involving a conscious embodied experience can only enrich resilience and NDA in facing the world around us. Also, separate, well, that's enough. She has another question, but I'm just going to ask that one. Do you want me to repeat it?
The first part, and it might be more a David question, I'm not sure.
I was thinking it might be more of a Melanie question.
Next question.
So go ahead. If you'll repeat the first part again, that'd be great.
Can you please comment on the use of embodied meditative practices for fostering resilience and NDA? For example, Buddhist walking meditations and Russian sistema practices.
Yeah, I can't. So I will answer that from the perspective. I'm a MBSR teacher, mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher, the John Kabat-Zinn model. And that is integral to the embodied practices are integral to the development of mindfulness and lays the foundation. Although NDA is never talked about in the MBSR curriculum, there is embodiment is throughout there in terms of sitting practice, the body scan, yoga and walking meditation are all about cultivating embodiment of turning into and sensing the body, which then cultivates, especially the body scan, cultivates interoception. There is research out of France that the body scan, there is a loss of salience of the body, of the boundary of the body in the body scan, so which then induces an NDA experience. So was that an adequately complex answer?
And Shoshana, I'm going to table your second question because there's so many coming in, and we'll come back around to it if we have time. From Deb Haynes, how much relational capacity did you have with Rick before doing this work?
Oh, it's a really good question because I have known Rick. He took a recent training with me and has been interested in AAIT, so has reached out to me for information about it. So we've had a couple of conversations about it. But other than the weekend training, that's the extent pretty much. And I want to point out too that my intention coming to ACEP was to really invite someone from the audience, to have someone. I've demonstrated this multiple times with people with whom I have no contact, I have no relationship, and it's just our first time meeting. And I've done this with people where I didn't know the trauma, both in my office and in presentations, where I don't know what the trauma is that they're working on, and we're still able to resolve it.
Thank you. From Melinda Chichester, do you have to be a licensed therapist to get training in AAIT?
No, that was something I really, I spent a lot of time thinking about, because I think that the need for healing and wholeness is so great right now. And so I invite healing arts practitioners. I've had people who are speech pathologists, acupuncturists, physical therapists, a teacher, and several spiritual directors, ministers. And here's the thing about that is, in the course of our training, we spend quite a bit of time talking about our sphere of what our sphere of influence is, where our lane is, and really learning to recognize that, for instance, my work, I'm not trained in substance use treatment. I'm very well versed in the treatment and care of those who journey with mood disorders. So if someone comes to me with a substance abuse issue, I'm likely to I will send them to someone else. And in the same way, people who are not trained as therapists, they're using this work for other things, like someone, one of the practitioners uses the work for helping people declutter their house and deal with the emotion around that. And she's a declutter coach. Yeah.
Cool.
Right.
All right. We have a question from Mary Seiss. How does this process work for those traumas where the body is impacted? For example, rape.
Beautiful. So one of the things that happens in these kinds of experiences where the trauma, where the body is impacted, often there's dissociation. So one of the questions you heard me ask Rick was, are you inside your experience or are you outside looking in? Because that gives me a clue of if he has dissociated or not. And if he's dissociated, then I'm going to have to do a little something else to retrieve that aspect before we can fully resolve the trauma. So when the body is involved, like rape or accidents of some kind, then it's important to go to other points of view. So for this, it would mean going to the point of view of the body. So in that case, we take a very Gestalt approach of interviewing the person as their body. I'm no longer Melanie, I'm Melanie's body. As Melanie's body, then we interview them about the trauma and resolve that from the body's point of view, and then shifting back to the primary being. Because we're not, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
From Robert Egrey. Again, everybody, if I'm massacring your name, I just global apology. Would the work with Rick have been accomplished just as well with EFT or some other energy psychology techniques?
I'm smiling because I'm not trained in EMDR. I took a course with Janine Shapiro probably 30 years ago when it was first developing. I've trained lots of people since then who are trained in EMDR. I got trained in EFT.
The reference was EFT.
EFT is, so I'm smiling because I did EFT for years before I studying with Zurarod. I trained with Gary Craig. And I will share with you, two people say these kinds of things to me. This is like EFT on steroids. And the other comment is, if EMDR is very comfortable, it will get you where you're going. It's like a comfortable SUV. And AAIT is like a spaceship. You get there before you know it, and you feel like you are completely at ease, like it was a transport experience. So I don't use EFT at all anymore. I find what I'm doing so much more quick and deeply profound. I sort of dropped that out of my repertoire.
Okay.
Rick had a comment.
Yeah, Rick, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just to build on that, being a practitioner myself and, using some similar methods like EFT in the past, the speed at which you get a response with AAIT versus EFT is significantly faster, or EMDR even. When I first did the method using a previous trauma memory related to my loss, maybe took 15, 20 minutes, if that, to resolve it completely. Which could have taken in a traditional therapy setting, potentially months, if not years for some people, which was surprising for me. Having to do grief counseling and stuff with patients a lot of the time, and it being a very long process at times, even using some currently very effective evidence-based methods. It's just the time at which you get the emotional response that you're desiring is just significantly faster to reach your outcome.
Okay, thank you. From Paula Shaw. How does estimating the distance of the directions impact his feelings and the emotional calm that resulted?
Well, we're not fully sure. This is a question that I can tell you as a clinician, what we're doing is that it becomes psychologically confusing to simultaneously attend to the here and now and the there and then. And then when you add the space element to it, the estimating the distance, it anchors the person to the present. And what many people describe is like the photograph just sort of starts disappearing, or it breaks up like a mirror, or it just dissolves like sand off the fingertip. And so not just the image picture, which typically, if we've experienced trauma, those images just poof, impose themselves on us. And that typically just completely doesn't happen anymore. And so I don't know whether that fully answers the question. And I would like to see more science minds on that question than I have the capacity for.
Thank you. From Jane McCampbell Stewart, would love to have the script of the meditation that Melanie led us in. I'd like to record it and use it for myself and my own meditation if possible. Thank you for considering.
Thank you for the question, and I'll just make myself a note and see how we could do that. I'll give that some thought. Thank you.
And from Philip Friedman, I was impressed with the forgiveness component. How important is that in your work?
I ask it after every piece of work. And the question that I ask is, do you feel a need for forgiveness or to forgive? And often when people feel that need, the feeling itself is accessible. Most frequently, that's accessible. So it's not imposed. I live in the South. I live in the Bible Belt. And so a lot of the folks that I see, that's an important piece for them. And asking that question illuminates the need. And then it allows for the feeling of forgiveness to really flow out and permeate us. But it's never coming from now it's time to forgive. It really is a question. It's an invitation. And I tell people, it feels like either you're thirsty or you're not. And so even people who are very religious will say, nope, no need. And so it's really, you will feel the need. It will be, I am thirsty and need some water, or I'm not. And I think it's very important. And I think that expanding that forgiveness to ancestors and to each other and to norms and systems and then to life or God itself, it's profound when people are in the state of ease of being after the resolution of some problem and they feel a need to forgive and then they offer that forgiveness to God or consciousness. That feels huge to people. So yeah, I think it's important.
Thank you. From Cheryl Madalena, is this method safe for people with complex trauma? When would you hesitate to use this method?
It's very safe for people with complex trauma. I wouldn't use it unless I had been trained. I would, people with complex trauma, it's really important that another phase of AAIT is collaborative agreement. So I would hesitate to use it if it felt like our collaboration wasn't strong, if it felt like our connection was weak or we weren't fully simultaneously together, I wouldn't do it. And you can feel that. I mean, it's the same with anything, really. We're not going to go into some process unless we're really connected, if we have a good agreement with each other.
Thank you. We have just a couple minutes left, so apologies to everybody whose question we're not going to get to. From James Musgrave, in process, if a client does have a part of themselves not ready to let go of an experience completely, what would a practitioner do then?
Beautiful question. I love this. So go to that video on end of words. And what I would most frequently do is have them feel that problem and what could be bad about letting go of it. Feel the problem and what could be good about letting go of it. And we go back and forth until there's absolutely no content arising, no thought, image, emotion, or sensation. There's just emptiness. And typically the person's ready to release it then.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'm sorry, that's going to be the last question as we're almost out of time and there's another learning lab starting in just a little over a half hour. So are there any final thoughts that you guys would like to share before I do a very quick wrap up?
Just want to thank you for inviting us to be here in this way with everyone. We were looking forward to being together, and it's also really, really nice to be with you in this way. And we're grateful. I'm grateful. I'm sure David's grateful to have the opportunity to explore these topics with each other in this way.
Deep bows to you, Cynthia, to the organization and to Rick and to everyone out there.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank all of you again for being with us today and sharing everything that you've shared. It's been really wonderful. And I know, Melanie, you mentioned if somebody had some sort of strong reaction, they could email you to the meditation, but I don't think you included your email address.
My email address is Melanie, MELANIE, at AAIT.solutions.
Want to repeat that one more time?
Melanie at AAIT.solutions. No .com on the end of that, just .solutions.
There you go, everybody. And so there were also a couple of comments about links in the slide went to weird other places. So just so you know that, like a t-shirt company or went to, there were a few of those. So you might want to double check.
Okay, so just email me for those resources and I'll make sure that you get them. Yeah, that's unpleasant. Okay.
Hey, who knows? It's those gremlins on the internet.
Right. Yeah, life is weird right now. So yeah, just email me if there's something that I mentioned that you think would be useful. Just shoot me an email and I'm happy to do what I can to provide those resources to you.
All right. Well, thank you again. And thanks everybody out there. We're all sending you big hug, lots of love. We would be doing it in person if we could. All right. So half hour, we're on again. Enjoy your break. Thanks again, Melanie, David, and Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.